We will make the recording now. This webinar is organized by Eurasian, Eastern Europe and Central Asia Learning Hub, supported by Global Fund to fight HIV, TB and malaria, and by our team, EECA team. And we are very happy to share with you information about the pro bono legal support provided by PILnet. And actually now I'm giving a floor to Anastasia Miller, who will present what legal support is available and how to use it, very practical. And we will have 1 hour. If I asked already to introduce yourself in the chat for us to know who is here and with which communities we are dealing today. And actually, if you have any questions while Anastasia will give us the information about PILnet and ways of receiving technical support, pro bono legal support, and all what we could get from this marvelous team, please write your questions in the chat, and we will make sure that they are all answered. Anastasia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ghana. Thank you for having me today and for co-organizing this learning opportunity with PILnet. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Ghana mentioned, I would do a very brief introduction to PILnet and what kind of support is available for civil society organizations. We also work with social enterprises and human rights activists and coalitions and different groups. So maybe starting by introduction, I'm a program director for civic space at PILnet. I'm working very close with my colleagues in Eurasia region. At PILnet, I'm working globally and covering all regions, but Eurasia very close to my heart as well. I'm coming from Central Asia, from Kazakhstan originally, but currently I'm based in our New York office. So PILnet has 3 international hubs. We have presence in New York, and then we have office in Budapest, Hungary, and office in Hong Kong. But we work globally, as I mentioned before, and we are serving as a bridge between private sector, corporate lawyers from law firms, and in-house lawyers from different corporations, and nonprofit sector and civil society organizations, and groups of human rights activists who need any type of legal assistance. So when PILnet was establishing in Hungary, now more than 25 years ago, the idea was that to create a space where civil society organizations can get access to the same quality of legal support and help that corporations and government can access. And that time, PILnet started building network of private lawyers and connecting them with public interest organizations. Today in our network, we have more than 100 law firms and over 1,000 lawyers around the world who are ready to do pro bono, which means providing any kind of legal assistance on free of charge base. So our network ready to provide operational support for your organizations as well as a program support. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. And we're running this platform that calls Clearinghouse. That's a place where any organization that working on public interest can come and request support, and it works really easy and simple. So maybe before jumping to more like a practical things and showing how it works, if there are any questions about PILnet's mission and things that
the key question from me is, what is the interest of these lawyers? Are they interested just to know about new law, or because the worries about the pro bono legal support usually from civil society that we will put more effort, more time to educate these people than the valuable support. We are very small niche, all of us working in a very small legal niche. And what is the interest for legal, the professional to work with us?
Yeah, Gana, that's a great question that we're hearing all the time from our partners from nonprofit organizations, like why? And there are different reasons. So some law firms, they actually require to do pro bono, and they would set up certain amount of hours that each lawyer should perform. And that's seen for a law firm as an opportunity to pay back to the society, to making sure that countries where they're working also legally healthy, and they acknowledging that civil society organizations are important stakeholders in the space. For lawyers, of course, yes, they can learn something new. So sometimes we would provide a training for lawyers specifically learning about certain things that they don't work with. But at the same time, when it's come to corporate expertise, and that expertise that's lacking in our sector, right? Like I'm a lawyer, I train lawyer, and I work all my life for nonprofit organization. Give me a case related freedom of speech or talking about victims of torture, refugee laws. That's something that I work on. But reviewing contracts, making sure that you comply with data protection and GDPR requirements, reviewing sanctions and employment contracts, understanding difference between employees and independent contractors. That's something that actually corporate lawyers can help with. Also for law firms, of course, there is a business case for pro bono. There are some publications there that it's helping with team building when you are, partners working with associates who just joined the firm, building these relationships, getting new skills. For instance, sometimes they would do research and present in front of a board of nonprofit organization. We have this program that calls Legal Health Check, that basically they would review the whole operation of the organization and show red flags. So not every day you would get opportunity at a law firm present in front of the board. So definitely learning new skills, team building. We also bring this opportunity to work cross-border. So we have this multi-jurisdictional project. And sometimes it's just a lot of exciting opportunities and feeling that you're doing something important. Especially as a corporate lawyers, you work a lot with papers and there are no people. And working with partners like yours, it's bringing more meanings to their work. I hope I answer your question, but there are certain other things, of course. But for law firms, it's also about reputation. It's about mentioning that they're doing something important. And actually, what we're seeing now, a new generation of lawyers joining law firms, they actually asking, "Can I do pro bono?" It's part of your work. It's not you doing something on your free time. It's billable hours in the most firms, which means they treating nonprofit clients as well as the same way as paid clients, just to make sure the quality of support on the same level.
Perfectly well. It answers my question. And now, what types of legal support? Because you mentioned support to the organization, analysis of the legal environment and context. Please describe further what is possible and how to get it.
Yeah, normally I talk about this type of support in two different categories. The first one is operational support for organizations, and the second it's program support. But beside this, we also do different type of educational trainings. We do different spaces and webinars like this talking about pro bono, but also like webinars explaining GDPR compliance and explaining navigating immigration laws for organizations who are relocating to different countries. So speaking about operational support, I think this is the most kind of important thing, especially now with a lot of organizations trying to find new way of funding, trying to find new jurisdiction where they can relocate because of oppressive laws and governments in their countries, because of conflicts and wars. And we've seen a lot of organizations on the move that have to leave their motherland and look for other jurisdiction to register. So basically, in that bucket of operational support, you can come to us and ask for support with anything related to the law in the country where you're located or relocating. For instance, recently we've been working with this group working with immigrants in Eastern Europe. They've been relocating from one of Central Asian countries, and they were establishing a legal entity in the European Union. So basically, we were helping them to identify what is the best type of legal entity. By we, I mean our network of lawyers. Because we would have, for instance, we work with a global law firm. They have a pro bono coordinator based in London or New York, and they would know what kind of expertise and capacity available at their law firm. So we basically would approach pro bono coordinator mentioning, look, in Belgium, we have a request from this organization working with immigration community there, and they need help with registration. They need first legal advice on type of legal entity that would suit their mission, and then how to structure it, and then help with registration. So basically, lawyers would help to fill documents, advising on the type of legal entity, making sure that, because setting up organizations, sometimes it's not that complicated, but then making sure that you can comply and report on everything on right time. And then organization was registered in Belgium, but then they had some difficulties with opening a bank account because banks seeing us as nonprofit sector not that profitable, but a lot of risks. So basically, then we've been working with our partners, because we also have in-house lawyers, I mentioned before, from corporations, which include banks as well, who can help us to understand what triggered those red flags, why banks say no for opening a bank account. So navigating those questions, this is something that we've been doing with our corporate partners. So this is just one example of operational support then that is available for civil society organizations. We also can do a training for your team. Let's say you have people working on HR and employment, and or you are a coalition of different members, and you would like to train them on a specific topic like data protection and GDPR compliance if you're based in the European Union. So we can bring a team of lawyers and do one-on-one training with your team when they would have a presentation and then answer your questions. Or you would like to set up for a bigger group as a coalition, for instance. So that's also possible. And should I go?
Yeah, I guess you could go to the brochure to show the whole landscape and how the clearinghouse is working, and then we will come to the questions, because there is the list of the questions from Nuriko, and that's ILGA Europe. So they're dealing with a lot of cases. So let's go to have the landscape clearinghouse and operational support organizations, registering program support, analytical work, everything, and then we will go very precisely to the questions.
Yeah, maybe before I would open the brochure on my screen, I also would mention about second type of support, which is program support. It's basically that's your program work that you're focusing on. Any type of legal research, case studies, analytics, preparing memorandums for advocacy, compare laws in different jurisdictions, different practices, looking for best practices, looking for different type of cases from the European Union or UN treaty bodies, drafting your UPR reports or complaints to the UN treaty bodies or European Court, working with the UN special procedures and drafting anything there, like complaints and reports. So maybe I can share, just recently we've been working with our partners on one case from Armenia. They have been looking for amicus brief on the case that they submitted to the Constitutional Court in Armenia. And the case was related to discrimination of people based on their disability and limiting access to legal professions, specifically being appointed as a judge because person would have certain disabilities. So they tried to challenge this regulation at the Constitutional Court, and they asked if we would be able to find a lawyer in our network who would be able to support the complaint and submit amicus brief. And in our network, we actually not just found a lawyer who were working on this amicus brief, but it was a lawyer who has a disability and who actually have been appointed as a judge before he joined the firm. So basically they submitted two amicus briefs, one on behalf of the law firm, explaining international standards, best practices, and approach to discrimination with the law firm logo and signature of the partner. And then it was a separate amicus brief from former judge explaining how it's important and why. And actually this case was won, and the organization now celebrating this victory in the court. And I think it's for lawyers, it's also a great opportunity to feel that they were kind of part of this great precedent that was created in the court. So this is just another example of pro bono support for your program work. We also work with organizations in Tajikistan, for instance, where they've been working with government to try to develop some laws related to sexual harassment at the workplace. And instead of creating the wheel, they actually ask us to study best practices on definitions, what sexual harassment on the workplace is, how to investigate, how to prevent, what is the way for compensation. Then they define around 10 jurisdictions or 12 jurisdictions where they found the best practices in the world that they would like to understand. So we work with them together to develop a questionnaire, and then we found a firm who actually has location in all these countries. We worked with White & Case, and they had office, it was Japan and Hong Kong, and I think a few European countries. And then they created a great document. The first 2 pages, it's just a summary, and then the table answering all questions for each country. So basically, NGO can use that for advocacy on the national level and going to the government and saying, look, this is how it works there. We don't need to invent the wheel. We can borrow certain things and create our own legislation based on best practices around the world. So then I'm gonna go to the brochure. Let me see, I'm really bad with technology, but hopefully I would be able to share my screen. Can you see the brochure?
Yeah.
Wonderful. We're gonna share this brochure after the presentation. This is basically explaining how it works, and it's very simple. So we have an intake form. We're gonna share a link as well on our website. We work in several languages, so we're providing assistance, the intake form. And of course, further, when you're working with lawyers, let's say, in countries where we don't have languages for the intake form, you still can work with the lawyer, of course, in the local language. But for now, the intake form is available in English, Russian, Hungarian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. So we have all colleagues working on these languages. And the first very simple step, you would go to our website, and this is the intake form. You're gonna answer a few questions. Basically, we would like to understand what kind of legal assistance you need. And maybe it will take you maximum 5 minutes to fill out the intake if you know what you're looking for. If you're not sure about your request, we always coming back to the organization, setting up a call and trying to understand your legal needs better. So basically, after you complete the intake form, shortly, one of my colleagues would be in touch with you. We normally would schedule a call if this is the first time when you're using pro bono service, just explain how it would work, making sure we understand your legal needs. And we would draft meta description based on your request. we would share that with you. So sometimes if it's a very sensitive request, we can put that anonymously on our list that we're sending to pro bono partners. So after the meta description completed and you approve it, we would send it to our network. And also in our database, we have names and expertise. So we would try to match that expertise with your request. And wherever we have volunteers, they would run normally as a law firm, they would run conflict of interest. This is a standard procedure that they would do for all clients, making sure that they can assist you without running into any conflict, especially if on another side you have a third party, let's say some kind of companies, or for instance, we've been working with this organization focusing on breast cancer, and they couldn't work with any law firms or companies related to tobacco industry, for instance, so they have limitations. When the law firm would complete their check, we would pass name to you, just making sure that you're comfortable working with this firm. And after you confirm that everything is good, we would do introduction. Basically, we would introduce to a team of lawyers, set up a first call, just making sure that everything up and running. And then we actually hope that this partnership would go beyond this request, that you can build a long-term partnership. We know that sometimes our colleagues from nonprofit would ask for one advice, and then the work would go really well, and they go back to law firm and ask for another advice. So if the firm would have capacity and expertise, you can just continue working with them on pro bono base. If not, you always can come back to us and ask for any additional help or support. So this is very brief introduction to the clearinghouse. I think we have some questions going on in the chat. Do we want to go there?
Plenty of questions, but the main question is, you are providing support to NGO, to non-governmental organization of any form. Are you providing support to individual, independent human rights defenders or journalists, for example, for relocation? That's one of the questions. And that's actually, there will be a lot of questions. If I am the activist, could I get the support, or should I go through any organization as my supportive network?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So basically, we are working with organizations and coalitions, and we do not work with individuals. There are some exceptions, especially if it's a referral from an organization, if it's your staff who are relocating and you're looking for support. We can work together with organizations to develop certain type of resources that individuals would benefit from. For instance, we've been working on this information for people fleeing Ukraine when the war started. And it was a very detailed brochure for almost each country in the European Union, explaining things like, how can I get insurance? What is the work permit situation? What about kindergartens? Can I get access to shelters? What if I'm a victim of domestic violence? So this kind of questions that would definitely benefit individuals, but it was developed as a resource. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to support like one-by-one cases, like human rights activists coming to us and asking for help with getting a visa in the European Union. We can hold a webinar, and we did that in the past, explaining what are pathways for human rights defenders coming to specific European countries. We would have webinar. One was on Germany, one was on Belgium, then France, explaining different type of visas that are available, and kind of, different nuances, and lawyers would explain it, but it's not a legal advice, because when you're submitting the intake form and let's say asking to review your contract as an organization, it would be a lawyer working one-on-one with you, specifically looking on all your documents. On the webinars, it's more still kind of general information, not legal advice.
And there is more general question also about limitation. What organization, civil society or NGO you are not working with? Do you have any type of cases you don't take? Because there are, we could go one by one by cases which we have around the detention and different cases of detention and cases of the against NGO, and we could go them one by one, maybe some comments from your experience, but do you have any general limitations, what you are not taking at all?
Yeah. And maybe as an exception also to mention, when we're kind of working with individuals, when you're submitting complaint to the UN treaty bodies or European Court of Human Rights, right? Normally you're advocating on behalf of a specific person. So this kind of work that normally our lawyers would take on, because if you're litigating that at the European Court of Human Rights or UN treaty bodies, it means like it's some kind of a systematic violation of human rights. And we hope that it's also part of advocacy work that organization would do. And going to your question, it's a good question, actually, how we onboard organization and who would be eligible for pro bono support. We have our internal manual that basically we would work with any civil society organization that's focusing on protecting and supporting public interest and human rights. And on the top of that, we would work with social enterprises who would reinvest any profits that they have 50% plus 1% to the mission of the social enterprise. We do not work with political parties. We do not work on any cases related to political lobbying. And we would not work with religious organizations who are strictly focusing on promoting their faith and causing any kind of a discrimination based on religion. So in the past, we would evaluate case by case, but basically if it's a religious organization focusing on humanitarian support to everyone, that not based on their faith, so we would work with that organization to help them with any questions that coming from them. And based on that, basically, that's going to be limitation, only one limitation for matters that coming to us. So again, it's any type of legal assistance. Sometimes organizations would come to us and ask to help with fundraising. So we unfortunately don't do that, or funding. So we're not grant-making organization, but anything related to legal need, this is something that we can help with, especially, in this very hard time with very limited resources. It makes sense to take advantage of what is available from corporate sector and making sure that you also can focus on your mission instead of focusing on those operational needs and things. And also good thing working with corporate lawyers that they are a lot focusing on risk to prevent things before it would happen, right? To review your contracts before you would run into any challenges, difficulties.
There are a lot of questions, and I don't know if could we go one by one, but I see questions from Noriko about the human rights defenders who are illegally detained for human rights activism when cases with a strategic litigation cases on Supreme Court and UN treaty body detaining the gay men or trans women in Uzbekistan because the same sexual relations in Uzbekistan are criminalized, and actually legal lawyers in the country could not take these cases. They are afraid of getting cases, and transition of trans people in Kyrgyzstan and sex workers. The illegal detention of the sex workers. All of these cases, I'm not sure that we could go in each of them, but do you have any examples, and could the organization come to you with these cases?
Yes, and I even remember examples last year year and a half ago, we've been working with a lawyer, corporate lawyer in Uzbekistan, providing us, our partners from nonprofit sector, of course, providing with this research on procedures for, I'm trying to remember now, it was a request about transition. I think, yeah, it was, the procedure is not clear there. And we ask lawyers to, so we had questions basically from NGO because we are not expert in that topic, right? So we're relying on you, what kind of needs are there. And the request was to understand and request certain internal documents that publicly not available. And we found the lawyer quite quickly in Tashkent who was able to take the case and do this research so lawyers can actually, from nonprofit organization, build the case and try to build the arguments for the international advocacy. Sometimes this kind of expertise, you don't need to know law in the country, right? You need to understand international standards and basic principles. So it means it can be lawyer-based somewhere else, which is also a great advantage of working with global law firms. Sometimes you would have someone from Bishkek based somewhere in London who basically admitted to both bar association in Kyrgyzstan and in London. So they feel quite safe to working on this kind of matters being outside of the country. So they would take a case and work on it. Sometimes we have lawyers we have one partner, amazing partner in Italy who loves to work on cases to the European Court of Human Rights. So again, of course, you would need to understand basic national standards, but we would expect that nonprofit can share that information. And then you just building the complaint. And normally, I know that as a nonprofit organization working on certain topics, we are experts in that topics. But sometimes we just not have enough resources. So we would use pro bono lawyers as an additional task force for certain things. Like, for instance, it was a case that NGO tried to submit to the European Court of Human Rights, and they need to combine around like 20 or 30 interviews from clients. So we basically create a team of 10 lawyers who would go through these interviews, organize them, kind of enter in database and organize in the way that NGO was requiring, sorting them by certain different articles that was violated, basically proceeding all this data and providing some analytics. So this is something that also, if you're struggling to complete some part of your task while you're working on some advocacy or doing some analysis of case, let's say you have a bunch of decision coming from your Supreme Court or Constitutional Court that you would like to analyze, but there are no enough staff and capacity in the organization. This is something when lawyers also can come and help with their skills, analytic skills that they have.
If to summarize what we hear, that yes, there could be support in different cases, but my question is could corporate lawyer go to detention center or prison or police department if somebody is detained and be the real lawyer there?
Yeah, that's normally very challenging. And as I mentioned, that's why we don't work on individual cases. Sometimes corporate lawyers would take litigation when you have to physically go to the court. For instance, in Czech Republic, pro bono lawyers been working on the case when the fire happened in mental hospital, and some patients die from that fire, and they were representing relatives of victims because basically it was a government responsibility to make sure that the place is safe, and it wasn't safe. So corporate lawyers actually been working very close with the nonprofit organization trying to get compensation and keep government accountable for the fire, and they were going to the court representing relatives of victims. But specifically going to the detentional or pre-detentional center, taking cases, that's not something that our network would work and help, unfortunately.
And then if summarize the request from OLA, from NPUD, Eurasian Network of People Who Use Drugs, legal profession to use international regulation to legal analysis to understand how the other countries regulate providing some medical care. That's what I hear it's possible to do by the pro bono support from PILnet. But will you help, for example, to present your results to the governmental officials? Is it possible for your lawyers to take part in some advocacy meeting to present these results, to help organization to explain how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, research and this kind of cases is something that our partners happy to take. And for presentation, as I mentioned, sometimes they would present that for the nonprofit board, and they're always excited, actually. I think it's also depends case by case, but technically it's possible. And I think especially, if they have offices, then being physically there, but maybe like online meetings. And I think it's something that partners would be actually happy to do.
Clear. And now the core question again, to establish relations between the organization and you. First, we are completing legal intake form and saying we're organization working on these cases. Then we are receiving call and arranging the call with your staff to clarify what would be the nearest, the most urgent, or the most clear request. And then your staff helping to make this request, which goes, and then some legal advisor or law firm will come to the organization and they will work on this particular request. If request is finished, so you are not providing lawyer for all the times for this organization for any request they could have, and it's not constant relations, but that's one request, one legal firm specific selected to respond to this request. Am I right in understanding, or I missed some steps?
No, you explained it very well, Gana. You got all details, and that's right, that lawyers would work on specific requests that organization would submit to us. Sometimes organizations would submit a few requests at the same time because there are different needs, different expertise needed. Normally, we would recommend do not submit more than 3 requests because just make sure you also have capacity to be able to meet with lawyers, because it's also you have to contribute to that. Like they would have questions, they would need to be in touch with you. And also we would work with you to frame that request in the legal way that lawyers normally would like to receive it. So we would expect, of course, that you would also dedicate some of your time to this work. Yeah, but the procedure that you explain, it's right. You would have basically a PILnet person, you key contact, would be always in touch with you. And if you run into any problems or you feel like not comfortable working with the firm, we always can switch and find another partner in the network.
And timeline, because as for now, for example, 10 of Georgian organization received something from prosecutor office, and they have some legal advisor in Georgia, but that's around the week, and this request, I guess, will take a bit more than a week. What timelines you usually have?
Yeah, that's a good question. It also depends. Depends on the type of request, depends on the jurisdiction, because we have a stronger network of partners in Europe and European Union and the US. But for instance, Central Asian countries, pro bono culture is not that developed there, even though we have partners. And if it's a simple advice, let's say, would require less than 10 hours of pro bono work, reviewing a contract and giving advice on that, it would take maybe a couple of weeks. But normally in our intake, we would recommend, especially if it's a complex research, with different jurisdictions, we would recommend to submit it 3 months in advance, because it would take us some time to find a firm. They would run conflict, they would do introduction with you. And then if it's a big research that involves different jurisdictions, of course, it would need more time. So we would ask to approach us in advance. But also related to your question, and for instance, example with Georgia, we have a different also tools and resources that might help to get preliminary advice. I can share my screen maybe and show a couple of those resources that we're gonna share with participants as well. So for instance, if you need to understand the employment compliance on our website, you can, of course, always you can request one-on-one support from lawyers, but also you can go to the website and look for some information on certain countries where research was completed. And for instance, if we look at Belgium, there is this guide that would answer basic questions about employees, independent contractors, volunteers, how to treat non-citizen employees. And normally we try to create our guides in the way that it's very easy to read and follow, and trying to avoid all this legal jargon, so the regular people can understand. But basically, there is information like what is a fixed-term employment contract, and this kind of thing. We have also, for instance, banking guide for nonprofit organization in Europe. Also, I think around 38 countries here that you can go and see basic questions. We developed this guide together with European Center for Nonprofit Law. And it's also basically like frequently asked questions. But then currently, we noticed that a lot of NGOs struggling with opening and maintaining bank accounts.
It's the changes because of caused by this whatever money laundering technology, and a lot of questions are coming. That's true, and especially with the reporting the payment to foreign citizens to the repressive governments. It's also plenty of issues could cause.
Yeah, so we set up this help desk. It's going to be launched in a week. We're almost ready. And basically that help desk for this kind of express urgent consultations, but also trying to help navigate in a long term. But basically when NGO would run to this kind of difficulties, let's say they got a notice from a bank that the bank account is going to be suspended or closed, or some transaction gets frozen, or they cannot open a bank account and they don't understand what's going on. So we set up this help desk when they can come, and we have already a panel of experts working on banking and finance. And we have 3 set up questions that basically would help NGO to understand better how to tell the story to the bank. Let's say they're opening a bank account, to make sure that they sound transparent and providing all necessary information without triggering any red flags. And then lawyers can advise in this like a 1-hour consultation about next steps. And then if additional support needed, so basically for that one, even like an organization can reach out to us and we would set up that in a couple of days. And they can talk to lawyer. And then if additional support needed, sometimes lawyers can draft you a letter to the bank. So we had a case, for instance, when NGO got a notice from a bank that basically the account going to be frozen. And it was a letter on the letterhead of the firm requesting additional information from the bank. And after that, in a few days, bank sent another notice that there was a mistake. So everything is fine. So we have that example as well.
I have, guys, if you want to speak and to ask your question, not in the chat, but literally to Anastasia, please raise your hand. And I have a question in the chat: who pay for legal advisors? That's actually pro bono, so legal firms are paying to these legal advisors. It's their time, but who paying for your project? So for your work as a coordinators.
Yeah, for law firms, so normally, as you said, it's like if it's billable hours, it's going to be charged to the law firm. Sometimes some law firms, they're not putting as a billable hours. From our side, we have a different source of support. As a nonprofit organization, of course, we're getting support from foundations, and especially now in this challenging time, a lot of foundations, they are very concerned about legal health of their partners. So they're providing grants, but then they want to make sure that organization actually would be able to deliver and not run into any difficulties. And also we're hearing from funders now that even sending money and grants, they have challenges. So obviously for them, we are there to support their grantees, and we're also getting some support from funders. We're getting some donations from law firms. We have law firms that we are working with, and they are also donating as a business to up and run our organization. And we have a small amount of coming from our generous board.
Thank you very much for your answers. And guys, I don't see the hands. Maybe somebody want to step in to ask your question directly, not in my summarizing.
I'm also sharing some other resources. Meanwhile, just want to show this GDPR compliance webinar that we just did with Latham and Watkins in 2025, and it's also available in a few Eastern European countries' languages, and it's also kind of a very brand new resource for safeguarding, especially for those organizations, if you're working with children's or another vulnerable communities. This is something that would be good to have. And we have templates on the website. We have some guidelines for child safeguarding, for instance, policies. And also we're always happy to help you to develop your own one.
Brilliant. There was one request to you, if it's possible to explore more languages than just Russian in the region, because we all understand that it's more and more people will need to have their local languages, Georgian, Armenian, Ukrainian, Kyrgyz language. That's really for the communities. It's important. You know that we are fighting with empire, and having only Russian, it's not very politically correct. So if it's possible to think about getting requests in other languages, that would make us very happy in this part of our fight. I don't see any specific questions, and I see feedback that all is clear, and how to get the support, it's also clear. Maybe some additional comments from guys, if you want to take the floor. I don't see hands. Maybe I just missed the hands. No.
Maybe also I have to mention that if organization would need to develop some kind of guidelines for their partners or groups that they're working with. For instance, we've been working recently with organization that work with communities in democratic exile, and it was about documentation that basically was an organization focusing on Belarus, and they passed a law that newborns outside of the country, they cannot get birth certificates. So, and we were trying to do some research with our partners in the European Union to see how it's regulated to prevent statelessness. So that's an example, just like creating some resources for your groups that you're working with related to food security, health, healthcare, anything.
I have plenty of ideas already, and hope to stick to the idea that we need to prioritize and to get not more than 3 requests, because that's take time, and that's really need to have our own commitment and our own staff to manage this request and to use information provided by your lawyers properly. If there are Yeah,
Sorry,
yes,
one
please.
comment. I realize I kind of did not reply to your comment about languages as well, because wherever we're creating a resource for specific country, we want to make sure that it's available on local language. So we are actually a small team. All work that we do globally around the world, we are just like 27 of us. So we have like colleagues who are based in Hungary who, of course, would speak Hungarian and provide language advice and support on local language, right? But then resources that we did for people fleeing Ukraine. So we found also support to translate that to Ukrainian language to making sure that it's available. And because we understand for local communities, it's important to get that information in the local language. Otherwise, it's helpless, right? It's useless, sorry. So, but also, even if the start intake would be in English, but then you're connecting with lawyers working in your country. And of course, you would switch the language to the local language. So that's kind of our expectations.
Okay. For me, it's more or less clear, and then the real work begins with the requests and then very practical and very detailed. I don't see any hands, and I guess that we need to thank you very much for this initiative and for coming to us to share it, because we are in very big need of the support, and it's very valuable, especially when we are all running out of the resources and do not have resources for high professional legal advice. So that's very valuable, and I'm very happy that we could share it with our members, with our communities, and hopefully you will get a lot of requests, and you could fit all of them and respond to all of them.
Yeah, happy to work. And if anyone still have questions that you're not comfortable discussing right now, so Gana, you would share my email as well. So feel free to drop me a message and we can hop on the call. Happy to discuss that. We're also using Proton and Signal for more secure communication, so we can switch to any of those channels as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of our participants for your time and for absolutely amazing questions and for your work you are doing to protect the most vulnerable and the most needed people in our society. So we're closing now, and then all the materials will be available in your email, and please use PILnet, because they are here for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Gana, for your kind support and moderation. And yeah, thank you so much for all these important projects that you're doing, and we're here to support you so you can focus on your mission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.